Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kickstart VMware Cloud Foundation VCF project series. I'm Satya Shrestha, a senior staff executive solutions architect at VMware. In this exciting new series, we'll be hosting subject matter experts who will join our session to guide you on different ways to leverage VMware Cloud Foundation for establishing your private cloud within your organization. Whether you are utilizing traditional applications on virtual machines or modern applications on Kubernetes and containers, private AI, or a blend of these technologies, we aim to provide you with a comprehensive overview of these use cases. We'll delve into specific components, offering in-depth insights and sharing various reference architectures. And this is just the beginning. Moving forward, we plan to initiate sessions where customers and partners can actively contribute by sharing their real-world production experiences in implementing these compelling use cases on VCF. Now, without any further delay, I would like to introduce my colleague in this inaugural topic of this series that covers the advanced workload acceleration use case, Kubernetes in and on VCF. Our first subject matter expert here is my colleague, Vincent, who is the speaker for this topic. Vincent, welcome to the show.
Hey, hi. Hi, Satya. Thanks for having me.
It's really glad that you can join us, man. Now, Vincent, if you could introduce yourself briefly and also provide overview of what we can anticipate in this use case, that would be really awesome.
Yeah, so as Satya has mentioned, we are actually in the same team. So we are part of the Executive Solution Architect team here in VMware at Broadcom. So we handle the top 50 APJs accounts and helping customers to build their hybrid cloud architectures.
And it's an awesome ride so far, man. I'm pleased that we can work together and help our customers and partners on the VCF journey, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So as you have seen from the previous slide from Satya, there's actually multiple use cases on VCF. So the first use case that we're going to talk about is the advanced workload acceleration. So in that pillar itself, you have infrastructure as code for developers and even private AI and things like that. So I have chosen, the infra as code, and I kind of call it Kubernetes in and on VCF. So you probably wonder, why do I title this in? Probably when you watch throughout all this video, then you will probably realize. So on the first one, we'll talk about Kubernetes in VCF first. Then later on, and subsequently, as you can see from the topics over here, about 8 main topics with subtopics under it. Then probably the on VCF will come out itself, right? Yeah, so first session that we are here, we're just going to give you an overview on Tanzu, on VCF, the architecture, the building blocks. Then we go in to talk about the supervisor clusters. So that's the brain, that's the management of all the Kubernetes API for VCF, right? And then we'll have, load balancer, which is very important, right? Providing ingress to the supervisor clusters as well as to the guest clusters, as well as VMs. We're going to talk about the RV solution, right? Providing you with layer 4, layer 7. Mm-hmm. And we go on to the on VCF part, which is, you can get Tanzu Kubernetes grid clusters, also known as TKC, running in VCF. Mm-hmm. Then we will talk a little bit about VM service, like how we have evolved self-servicing of VMs, right? And this time around, we are using Kubernetes API to do that. So that's VM service. And then we have multi-zone support, make your TKC or the workloads that you have on the platform to be highly available. Then we will also talk about the supervisor services. These are like PaaS-like services that you can enable on the supervisor cluster, right? Such as container registry, which is Harbor, Ingress, Cert Manager, external DNS, backend recovery like Volero. And last but not least, we also talk about how this platform is going to integrate with the ARIA, right? So ARIA is actually part of the VCF stack, right? So such as automation, governance, and things like that. So yeah, I think lots of things to talk about in this series. So looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, exactly, man. This looks really, really cool. We will double click on each of these services and then learning each one of them in an individual video series, right? So I'm really excited about it. And I know it's going to be a really exciting journey. So let's kick off with the first topic here, which is what is Kubernetes in VCF? What problems we are aiming to solve for our customers?
So maybe paint a story over here, right? So imagine yourself, you are the customer, right? And you have thousands of workloads running in your cloud, right? You have like Kubernetes workloads, you have VMs, and many other workloads that's running on your cloud. But then again, if you look at the way that how the infrastructure is built up supporting all these applications, a lot of times you'll find yourself still managing a 3-tier architecture, right? The compute, network and storage. And yeah, you've done quite a fair bit on virtualization on the compute side. But if you look at the network and security as well as storage, pretty much they are very much hardware based, right? And especially in the network, you will have multiple different appliances from different vendors, making like automation actually very challenging.
Yeah.
So from the DevOps teams or from the apps teams, they are really looking at ways to manage these thousands of workloads much more efficiently and much more seamlessly, right? And they really want to shorten the time to deliver infrastructure services to the apps teams, right? From the infrastructure team perspective. So they are looking at like various ways to automate it. And naturally, they will be exposed to all these different automation tools, right?
Exactly.
But if you look at from the, like, let's say, for example, compute perspective, you have like PowerShell, people are using like Terraform, Ansible to create VMs and things like that, to automate the VMs. But then on the network side, right, because of the multiple different vendors that you have, you end up with different ways of automating on the network appliances. So for example, routing and switching, you probably have RESTful API to do that. Load balancer, you probably have Python scripts to do the automation, and then firewall, you probably use to Ansible. So imagine if you put yourself in the shoes of the DevOps team, like trying to automate this set of infrastructure, you are faced with all this different automation tool, right? All this different stack that you need to handle with.
Exactly.
So if you have been on the VMware journey, or even what we call the software-defined data center stack, virtualizing three-tier stack, well, you kind of simplify a bit on the infrastructure side. So for example, if you use NSX, it helps with the networking and security side of things, right?
Yep.
And of course, you still have ARIA that helps you to automate the VMs. But it's still challenging, right? Because, if you look at the way how NSX is being automated, you have to be familiar with RESTful API and maybe some Ansible. And then if you look at the load balancer stack, NSX Advanced Load Balancer is actually, a lot of times people use Ansible to automate the NSX Advanced Load Balancer.
Yeah.
On the other hand, while we are doing, software-defined data center stack, there's also modern applications that's based on Kubernetes, right? Microservices that's running on Kubernetes. And these are actually being kind of automated using the Kubernetes API. Right. So over the years, where you have to manage both Kubernetes as well as VMs, you are still faced with, not that many automation tools, but it's but it's still challenging, okay?
Yeah, but still quite a few tools there that you have to master and then start using between teams, right? Yeah, it's a challenge.
Exactly. So, over the last few years, as we saw the proliferation of Kubernetes, a lot of customers and users, right, they start going onto the Kubernetes bandwagon, right? And they're getting a lot of traction. It's kind of like very easy to use the Kubernetes API to automate the full stack, right? Like compute, network, storage.
Right.
So VMware actually acknowledged that, and we actually start doing, using Kubernetes API and make sure that, our stack are able to be consumed by Kubernetes API, right? Whether it's in the form of a CLI or the actual API themselves.
Yeah.
So when you really look at the end outcome for the DevOps teams, they can really focus on doing the automation, right? Without dealing with all the different automation tools to get simplification and standardization of your automation tooling. If you can see over here on the right-hand side, I think it's a little small, but basically you can see that on the left, it's the network stack, right? It's in the YAML file. You can specify all the configuration that you want for your applications in terms of YAML. And same thing for the workload as well. You can also create a YAML file for it. So now you can really just consolidate, make a single YAML file if you want to, and then push it to the Kubernetes API that's part of VCF, and you can really automate your stack end to end.
This is really awesome and very impressive to see that VMware is taking Kubernetes to the next level, right? With our VCF and the Tanzu marrying up with each other. And I can see that this is revolutionizing the consumption of vSphere, the compute, virtual machines, storage, right? As well as networking and security. And now with Kubernetes and all this declarative model, we can really enhance the user experience and just give them the infrastructure as code kind of interface within from vSphere, right?
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned the declarative model, right? But so this is really like the additional benefit that you using Kubernetes API, right? So in Kubernetes, they have this controller concept, control loop concept, where you can actually go in and define what is your intended state.
Yeah.
And if let's say, for example, there is any gaps from your actual state to the desired state, the controller will actually go and reconcile from you, right? So for example, if you say that, I want to have 3 replicas of my VMs, and so happen that there's only 2 available, right? So the controller will say, hey, there's only 2, I need an additional one. They will actually go and talk to vCenter and go and, or even the Kubernetes controller, control plane, say that let's spin up another replica of it, right? So that is the operational benefit that you get from the Kubernetes control loop mechanism. Yeah. And we are actually bringing all this goodness of Kubernetes into VCF. And that's why, I call it Kubernetes in VCF, right? Yeah.
Kubernetes in and on VCF, right? And like you said, the control mechanism that we have, it really helps to enhance the resiliency of the applications residing there, right?
Yep.
Absolutely, man. So for understanding for our audience here, I'm actually eager to learn more about what are the architectural components of this model, what are the components, and essentially the building blocks that we really need to set up this platform. If you can talk a little bit on that.
Yeah, sure. So to build this platform to support both your VCF admins or VI admins as well as the application teams, you need a few building blocks. The first, of course, you need to make sure that your infrastructure is virtualized. What do I mean by that, right? If you look at the stack, it's not just your compute, but your compute network and storage, right? So that has to be ready. And then on top of that, this is where we add the Kubernetes part into the virtual infrastructure, right? And we actually need the workload, we call it the workload control plane, or the supervisor cluster. Basically, this is a set of like VMs is run on top of your infrastructure that provides the Kubernetes API, and then subsequently provide you with all these services, right? VM service, as well as Tanzu Kubernetes grid services. Then, of course, we want to provide extensibility to the platform, and therefore we have the supervisor services. I kind of talked a little bit about it in a previous 2 or 3 slides back, right? Where you have like Harbor, Contour, and Valero and things like that. So this is the layer, right? This is very necessary to support all your container platform and things like that. Okay. Then the other one is, of course, you need to take care of the high availability for your container workloads, right? And as well as your VM. So that's where you say is how you actually want to define your availability zones and things like that, right? That's another layer.
Yeah.
And a lot of time where now we talk about AI and things like that, right? So, you definitely probably need GPUs in your private cloud. So that's where we have the capability to expose, hardware features to the platform itself. Okay.
Yes.
And last but not least, you definitely need this user interface, right? Whether is it for the consumers to go and discover services or for the admins to actually manage the platform itself, right? So that's the last piece, which is what we call the cloud consumption interface, right? We're going to talk about it in our next few series, right? That's the 5 building blocks for this modern IaaS platform. Yeah.
So all these building blocks, as we said, we will be covering each individual components here in our future video series. So yeah, I'm really excited for that as well. This is great.
Yeah. So I think end of the day, if you look at the platform itself, the value that the user is going to get or how the users are going to benefit will be the VI admin as well as the consumer. Like maybe let me share a little bit more on like what is this improved experience that we are talking about over here, right?
Yes.
So 2 main groups, you have the VI admins as well as the consumer, right? The VI admin are able to add new services on this platform, right? Whether is it in form of continuous delivery tooling, right? Like Argo CD or MinIO for S3 storage, or whether is it for container registry. The VI admin is able to go into the cloud portal and add all these new services.
Right.
Then, of course, the consumer, again, going to the cloud portal, they can actually discover what are the services available for them to use. Once that's done, okay, and maybe the consumer requests from the VI admin, hey, I need some VM service as well as TKG service. How is the VI admin is going to say, yep, I can give you all the services, but with some governance, right? So that's where they can go and create a namespace, okay, and then you can say what kind of storage you're going to use, what are the resources that you're going to have, what kind of t-shirt sizing of nodes that you're going to have, that's VM class. Yeah, so they are able to set quotas and policies, okay? And with that, the consumer can actually, log into the platform and start, they already have discovered the services, they can start consuming the services, right? Whether in the form of virtual machines or TKG service.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but that's not all, right? The VI admin can also curate what is the content that the consumer is able to access to, right? So what kind of operating system they are able to use, like basically is the golden image concept, like for example, you had a Windows template, Red Hat Enterprise Linux template, Ubuntu, and things like that. So they can actually define all this template, put in the content library, and the consumer can actually leverage all these services. Okay.
Yes.
Then of course, role-based access control is very important. Who can access what and things like that. Identity management. The VI admin can actually manage that. Okay. So so you can see that it is a very comprehensive platform put together and really improving the experience for the VI admin as well as the consumer. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, this looks really awesome. The VI admin, they can continually secure the environment. They can continually implement what they already have, right, in terms of their security policies, governance, and then they can manage not just the VMs, but now also Kubernetes platforms, right, from their own central plane, right? And then the consumer, they can just consume whatever is provisioned, and then they also are not having issues, provisioning the resources they need and then developing the applications they need to develop, right? So this is really cool. Hey, Vincent, man, I really liked what you showed there, right? And would personally love to dive deep into each of these building blocks. But I think our audience, they want to understand the benefits and what are the improved efficiency that we get here, right? And the experience that they get with this new platform. So could you actually demonstrate and walk us through how a VCF admin can provision the infrastructure that developers need and subsequently enable developers for their own self-service?
Okay, sure, certainly, Satya. And I can show you the demo on that, but let's make the demo a little bit more fun and do some role-playing over here. I know it's going to be a little bit confusing, right? So because there's only two of us, so I'm going to assume the role of the apps team, right? And Satya is going to assume the role of the VI admin, right?
Yes.
But the thing is, like, I'm actually controlling the screen. So for the first part, please make sure that you assume that I'm actually Satya, right? So it goes like that. So Satya, I actually need some Kubernetes clusters for my modern application services. And I don't really want to bother you to go and create a cluster for me. So is there a way that I can self-service? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, let's go through that motion. Let's go to the console and then show us how it's exactly done. Yeah. Now here in console, this is the VI admin persona, right? And logged on as administrator at vsphere.local, who has full permission to that cluster. And then we have the workload management already installed, right?
Yep.
That's why we see this Kubernetes control plane here. So if you can explain, and then you as a VI admin, what needs to be done? If you can explain that, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm Satya now. I'm actually logging in. I actually need to create a namespace for Vincent to use. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to create a namespace and let me call it namespace 2. Okay. And I'm going to select the supervisor cluster, which is already enabled for me.
Right.
Okay? So once the namespace is created, now I need to go and define the storage policies, set some limits, set some permissions for to use, right? So I start with the permission. So now I'm going to search for Vincent from the apps team, and I make him the owner of this namespace.
Right.
And yeah, there's maybe probably different storage tiers with different policies. I can actually give him access to. So I'm going to give this Tanzu storage policies. And this could be backed by multiple different kind of storage, right? Whether it's vSAN, NFS, and multiple different rate level and availability model that you can actually use. So add the policies, and this is where you actually can set the limits, restrict the apps teams, not to exceed all these limits. You can set all this limit. I'm just going to leave it as this for now. Then what are the VM size that they can actually access to? This is where you define. You can add all the different VM class that the apps teams can access to. So each of the VM class specify how many CPU and memory they can actually use. And if you want to customize where the default is not what you actually like or what you actually need, you can actually go and configure it, right?
Right.
So I'm going to give all the different t-shirt size available for them to use. And then since Vincent asked for Kubernetes service, so I need to enable the Kubernetes service content library. This is where this content library has all the images of the Kubernetes images to be used in different versions. So they can actually use a CLI and see what's available for them to use, right? So
and this Kubernetes, all these images that you said, they are all upstream compatible, right? We downloaded it as a content library and made it available to the application developer here, right?
Yes, correct. So these are totally upstream Kubernetes compliant, right? So the clusters is upstream compliant.
Okay, good. So this is all we need to do as VI admin?
Yes. Yeah, that's it. So So once that's done, sorry about that, you can actually say, okay, let me pass all this information to Vincent.
Yes.
So usually what customers usually do is you probably have some internal knowledge base where you say, this is how you actually log into the clusters. You can publish all this information over there. So what you actually need is you need the supervisor IP address. This is where Vincent can actually log on to the clusters, get to see what are the services available. There's this portal that I spoke about, which is not available right here, but they can actually come in, log onto the portal, find all this information for themselves as well. That's also another way. So right now, as we speak, usually how we can do it is we can put all this information into a Confluence page or things like that. So that's all. And you just need to give them the namespace name, which is n-2 in this case. So I pass this information to Vincent. So now I'm going to change role a bit. Now imagine that I'm Vincent, I'm from the apps team. Okay. I'm not going to use the UI. I'm going to use the CLI. So basically, I got a Confluence page from Satya, and he actually told me that this is how I actually logs on to the namespace, right? So let me.
This is the app developer persona here, Vincent, going into his console and trying to log on, right?
Correct. So I'm going to show you the logon, right? So basically, I get the control plane or the supervisor cluster IP address in here. And yeah, I'm going to use, kubectl that I'm familiar with, managing Kubernetes to log on. And I'm going to specify my username, and I'm going to log into the context, right? Which is the supervisor context that I have. So that's it. It's very simple. And I can just log in over here, right? Specify my password. And yeah, I'm inside over here.
Nice, nice.
So first thing first, I need to create, because I want to create a Kubernetes clusters, right? So I need to know like Kubernetes release that I can use, right? So I can actually see all this. So you can see these are all the images that I can use, right? So just give you an example over here. This is like Kubernetes 1.27, right?
And all these Kubernetes versions, they are actually getting populated from content library. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. If you subscribe to a library on the internet, on a CDN, they will actually fetch all these images down automatically for you, right? So as an apps team, I just need to go and specify what image that I want to use.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, and you can actually see the VM classes that you use that I spoke about. What are the t-shirt sizes that you can actually use, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to craft a namespace clusters, right? And I'm going to create. So let me show you how is it being done, right? So this is the YAML file that I talked about, like, so this is TKC, and I can actually specify the namespace that I created. I can name my clusters. I can say what VM class, basically one of this is being here. So I'm going to show. And how many replicas that I want to have for my control plane worker nodes. Yeah, I'm going to spin 1 for demo purposes. And remember the storage policies that I was given to. Right? So this is where Satya needs to let me know what storage that I can use, and just make sure that I name the storage policies here as my storage class. Yeah, so this will be on the storage that I'm given or I have access to, right?
Yes.
And this is the one that it's part of the TKR, right? The release. So I'm going to create a Kubernetes version of 1.24.
Yeah.
And I can specify the CNI, which is based on Entra, and I can specify all the CIDR blocks that I'm going to use.
Yep.
Yeah, so once this is done, you can actually put CTL, apply, and the
YAML file,
Yeah, and this will actually go and kick off the creation of a cluster. Okay.
Yeah.
At the back end vCenter, you can see that they are getting the images and things like that. While this cluster is being created, right, I already have a cluster that's being created already, right, because it's going to take some time. I'm going to let you wait for this demo. So I'm going to use namespace 1 instead rather than namespace 2. Yeah, I'm going to log on to my clusters, my TKC cluster. Okay. Okay, so I'm logging to the namespace, and I have to specify my clusters. Yeah, okay, let me log on first before I show you how this looks like. Right. So basically, this is how it looks like. Same thing, log into the supervisor cluster. But now you need to specify which namespace you want to log into and which clusters you are looking to. Okay. So once you log in, you can actually see the nodes, 1 control and 1 worker nodes, right? And so what I can actually do right now is maybe just run some, container, right? And yeah, okay, you can see that it's starting creating. Okay. And I can actually start exposing the port. And I actually specify a load balancer. So, in my platform, I actually have, RV integrated. So I actually can use RV as a load balancer for my ports in my guest clusters. Okay.
You're right.
Yeah. So I can expose it. Okay. So just make sure that my ports are running. Okay. And then I can get the service.
Mhm.
Okay, so it's still pending an IP address from the RV side.
So just by this command, kexpose port nginx 1 port 80 type load balance, just with this command, because RV load balancer is already integrated in our cluster, so
Yeah.
it will automatically bind with RV load balancer, right? That's what we are showing here.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then in
So
our future series, we will dive deep into the whole process, how RV is done, and how it is, the servicing, etc., how those are done in future series, right?
yeah, so the future series we will talk about it, right? And then
Yep.
even the supervisor cluster is backed by RV, and then the guest clusters load balancer is also backed by RV, right? Just to show you over here, I can log into RV, and you can see that this is the one over
Yes.
here, and you can see that IP address coincide with this IP address over here. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So once that's done, I can just do some simple tests to make sure that I have access to the application port 80. As you can see, some response. Yeah, so there you go. Very quickly, as apps teams, I can just self-service creating TKGs clusters, or even VM using VM services all by myself, right? I don't really need to have much interaction with Satya, which is the VI admin. So once he gives me access to the namespace, I'm pretty much self-sufficient, okay?
Yeah, this is really cool, man. Yeah, while I would love to continue delving really deeper into lots of topics here, like we said, we have a series of videos that we are planning. So let's keep this first episode concise and really nugget-sized. And in our next session, we will bring Vincent again for a deep dive into each of the building blocks.
Thank you.
And yeah, thanks to everyone for watching. And we look forward to seeing you in next episodes. And bye for now.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye.